Biology and its field of action. This comprehensive science studies the life from different standpoints, from the structure of atoms and molecules and the biology of the evolutionary development of populations. The branches derived from biology are varied, and some examples are anthropology, anatomy, botany, embryology, biomedicine, biochemistry, cytology, genetics, histology, immunology, virology, and zoology. This list is not exhaustive since every day some knowledge about life is integrated and more tools are continuously created. Biology has allowed us to know the composition of the material that passes the genetic information from one living thing to another. This knowledge supported the theory that life has a common ancestor which has continuously evolved, and this evolution started with the prevalence of archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. Both bacteria and archaea are prokaryotes, which means there are single-celled microorganisms with no nuclei, and eukarya includes us and all other animals, fungi, plants, and single-celled protists. Now, how did life originate on the planet? Well, for centuries it was believed that a supreme being created life and also it was spontaneously created. But as knowledge progressed and succeeded in establishing principles and facts that should be demonstrated, other possible explanations from the origin of life were formulated. For example, electrical activity, volcanoes, origin of the bottom of the oceans, or even meteorites. But these are just theories because no one knows what created the planet or how the planet was originated. The only truth is that everything that has previously happened gave rise to a system based on deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid that are called DNA and RNA. Those two things are capable of storing information to create various molecules and edit their modifications.
We're going to be talking about the characteristics of living things. These characteristics can be summarized or classified in 8 points. They are organization, genetic code, response to stimuli, homeostasis and metabolism, growth, reproduction, and finally adaptation and evolution. First, we're going to be talking about organization, that states that the living things in their components are structured by a different way and complexly. Now we're having the genetic code, that it consists of the nitrogenous bases that consist of producing words to understand our language, and it also can be understood as universal. Now we're going with response to stimuli, that is a perception and response that come from the external and internal environment. Point 4 is homeostasis. Homeostasis refers to the self-regulation phenomenon that lead the conservation of properties so the human being can have a free life. Number 5 is the metabolism, that is obtaining and using energy, but it can also be classified as 2 options or 2 parts. The first one is the destruction of molecules, that is catabolism, and the formation of new molecules, it's anabolism. Number 6 and number 7 are growth and reproduction. The growth is that all living things that to a greater or lesser extent increase their volume, that is, they grow. And the reproduction is to perpetuate their species. Individuals must reproduce themselves. Differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. The distinction between prokaryotes and eukaryotes is considered to be the most important distinction among groups of organisms. Eukaryotic cells contain membrane-bound organelles such as the nucleus, while prokaryotic cells do not. Difference in cellular structure of prokaryotes and eukaryotes include the presence of mitochondria and chloroplast, the cell wall, and the structure of chromosomal DNA. Finally, something to say is that the eukaryotic cells are multicellular and the prokaryotic cells are unicellular.
The history of the cell begins with Robert Hooke in 1665 when he observed the bark of the cork oak with the microscope he created and noticed that its tissue was made up of small spaces which repeated themselves, so he gave these small spaces the name of cells. And some years later, Anton van Leeuwenhoek described in a more detailed way cells such as spermatozoa, protozoa, and bacteria. In the 19th century, Robert Brown described the nucleus of a cell. Johannes Evangelista introduced the term protoplasm, and he also was the first to describe cellular cytoplasm, while Rudolf A identified the mitochondria. But in the 20th century, with the invention of the first transmission electron microscope, it was possible to observe more cellular features. By the other hand, we have the cell theory that begins with Theodor Schwann, who proposed the first cell theory, and it says that the cell is the morphological and structural unit of all living things, while the second cell theory is named omnicellula ex cellula, and it was proposed by Rudolf Virchow, and it says that every cell comes from a pre-existing one. The third cell theory was proposed by Matthias Schleiden, and it says that the cell is the physiological unit of life. And the fourth cell theory says that the cell contains hereditary information to the control of its development, growth, reproduction, and the transmission of information to the next generation. But we can also add a fifth postulate that says that a disease begins in the cell. Is an instrument that allows us to observe things that are invisible to the human eye, and the characters who contributed to the creation of the microscope were Zacharias Janssen, Galileo Galilei, and Cornelius Drebbel. The first person who named this invention of as the microscope was Giovanni Faber in 1625. The most likely inventor of the microscope was Zacharias Janssen, since he worked making glasses and he discovered that combining two lenses at the end of a tube, he achieved greater magnification up to 3 and 9 times. But his microscope was not used for scientific purposes until 1665 by Robert Hooke, who also created the concept of a cell. And some years later, Anton van Leeuwenhoek discovered new techniques that allowed him to the greater magnification of lenses up to 200 times. So the microscopes he created were rudimentary, but they were not very popular among scientists until the 18th and 19th century, where the microscopes became a handy tool for scientists, especially in the medical field.
I'm going to explain the different forms of cellular transport and the levels of organization. First, cellular transport have two types, active and passive. Active spends energy and goes against gradients of concentration, and passive does not waste energy and goes in favor of concentration gradient. Now we have simple and facilitated diffusion. In simple diffusion is the process by which solids are moved along a concentration gradient in a solution or across a semipermeable membrane. Is carried out by the actions of hydrogen bonds forming between water molecules and solids, and facilitated diffusion is a form of facilitated transport involving the passive movement of molecules along their concentration gradient guided by the presence of another molecule. Now I'm going to explain what is endocytosis and exocytosis. First, in endocytosis, the material to be internalised is surrounded by an area of plasma membrane, which then buds off inside the cell to form a bicycle containing the ingressed material, and are three types: pinocytosis, phagocytosis, and receiver-mediated endocytosis. And the exocytosis is the process of moving material from within a cell to the exterior of the cell. This process requires energy and is therefore a type of active transport, and have two types: regulated and constitutive. Finally, we have the levels of organization, and in order will be atom, molecule, cellular organelles, cell, tissue, organ system, organism, population, community, ecosystem, and biome.
Homeostasis is a property of cells, tissues, and organisms that allows the maintenance of regulation of the stability and constants needed to function properly. It's a healthy state that is maintained by the constant adjustment of biochemical and physiological pathways. An example of homeostasis is the maintenance of a constant blood pressure in the human body through a series of fine adjustments in the normal range of function of the hormonal, neurovascular, and cardiovascular system. Allows the maintenance of blood pressure needed for body function, despite environmental change and change in a person's activity level or position. Other example is that it permits the maintenance of body temperature within narrow range. Now we're gonna talk about the organ systems. The circulatory system transports oxygen, nutrients, and other substances to the cell, and removes waste, carbon dioxide, and other substances from the cells. It also helps to stabilize body temperature and pH. The digestive system processes food and absorbs nutrients, minerals, vitamins, and water. The endocrine system provides communication within of the body through hormones, directs long-term change in other organ systems to maintain the homeostasis. The integumentary system provides protection against injuries and loss of fluids, as well as physical defense against infections from microorganisms, provides and also participates in the temperature control. The muscular system provides movement, supports, and heat production. The nervous system collects, transfers, and processes information, direct fast change in other organ systems. The reproductive system produces gametes and sexual hormones. Its ultimate goal is produce offspring. The skeletal system supports and protects the soft tissues of the body, provides movement, and produces blood cells and stores minerals. And the respiratory system supplies the blood with oxygen in order for the blood to deliver oxygen to all the parts of the body. The urinary system defends against microbiological pathogens like viruses and bacteria, which cause disease. The immune system eliminates excess water, cells, and waste products of blood and body, and controls the pH. The lymphatic system defends the body against infections and disease. It transfers lymph between the tissues and the bloodstream.
Adolescent health. Adolescence is a stage that is characterized by the transition between childhood and adulthood, which implies physical, cognitive, and psychosocial changes. It occurs between 11 and 19 years old. Adolescents are considered healthy people because physically their body has the strength to resist a disease. However, adolescent sees himself in the middle of many changes that may affect him in a significant mental health. The brain is in charge to carry out basic process, and in adolescence the brain is still developing. Social perspective. Adolescent health has to do with several aspects, such as the adoption of values and the development of an identity. Healthy lifestyles. Scientists have studied healthy enough to affirm that the most significant factor to maintenance is lifestyle. Lifestyles are related to social and cultural, pertain to diverse groups. They are related to social, to personal. When talking about lifestyles, we have to consider all this set of behaviors that involves an individual or a community, because these sets may affect all the area of health. Therefore, healthy lifestyles may help to cope with threatening situations. There are 7 behaviors that lead to health. First, sleep between 7 and 8 hours a day. 2. Have breakfast every day. 3. Perform 3 meals a day. 4. Maintain body weight. 5. Practice a physical activity. 6. Do not consume or moderate the consumption of alcohol.
7. Do know health and disease. Everything in our body is finely regulated to maintain homeostasis and health. So we can say that disease is the loss of homeostasis and balance. According to the Dictionary of the Royal Spanish Academy, health is defined as the state in which a human being is normally exercise all its functions. The World Health Organization, who define health, is a state of complete physical, social, and mental well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. But for a person to be considered healthy, this person may observe health in the psychic and social aspects. This means that the person must express his feelings and emotions into its social environment.